Hello and welcome to the Mastermind Body and Spirit Show. I'm your host, Matt Belair. Today's guest is a transformational coach who specializes in developing her clients' emotional resiliency as the access to taking inspired action. With over 14 years in developmental work, she has helped hundreds of people create the life they desire. Her deep work allows you to discover what you truly want, create a clear path to success, master being with your emotions, and create a happier life. Welcome to the show, Anat Peri.
Hi, thank you. Thank you for having me, Matt. Pleasure. Hi,
Yes.
everyone.
Yeah, so great to have you on the show. We've been working at it for a while. You're a very busy woman. You're running all kinds of retreats that are supposed to be amazing. I had a good time looking at your website and all the things you do, and you came highly recommended from Mark England and Mike Bledsoe, who've been on the show a few times.
Oh,
Really great
thank you.
guys who know their stuff. So it's great to have you on here.
Yeah, I could be on here. Yeah, it's been a busy month. So just wrapped up a retreat yesterday and happy to hop right into this today. So feeling good and ready.
Awesome. So why don't we start with a little bit about your background? Like, tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got into what you're doing today.
Um, yes, of course. So it seems that this was God's plan for me. It's something that I always was interested in. I'd say when I was in high school, friends always came to me for support, advice, and God knows what I said then. I could be a fly on the wall and see what it was. Probably wasn't that good, but whatever it was better than what they felt they could access themselves. So led me to wanting to major in psychology. And then I decided not to go that route because it meant 8 years of traditional school, which just didn't feel in alignment to me. So I actually spent my college years in business and finance and circled back to it in my mid-20s. Just through self-development work that I was introduced to, and that began my journey. I just turned 40, so it's going on 15 years, and I'd say I spent the first 9 to 10 years studying different modalities, working with different mentors, even plant medicine, so the full spectrum, and getting myself to a place where I felt that my life was transformed, that I was living in alignment, and as well as that I had the tools that could actually create lasting and effective transformation for people. So I didn't start my own business and working with people until about 4.5 years ago. And it's been an amazing, beautiful ride. A lot of just, God, if this is where you want me to be, then bring me those that need my medicine. Really just knowing without a doubt that this is where I'm supposed to be. So that's been a snippet of my journey.
Yeah, that's that's very interesting. First of all, you look very young for 40, so you're doing something very well. And when I had a look at your website, I really you had like the 4 proven techniques. I'm aware of neuro-linguistic programming. I think that if you are interested in personal development and self-help, I recommend and invite strongly to read a Basics of NLP book because it's very important. But you also have one in eye movement that I'm very curious about, emotional releasing, which is obviously good. And we need to go into those things. I think we're not really taught that to understand our emotions, connect with them. Some people say, oh, you don't go into the emotions, you kind of like cover it up and then some people, it's like, get into, the shadow work. Right. But then all of a sudden they're stuck in the crap and they don't really know how to transform it. And so there's a lot of mystery over there. And then trauma release, I think, is another good one. So you have a website and a retreat. It's Training Camp for the Soul, which I think is very fascinating. Why don't you speak about the inspiration for that and some of the techniques and experiences you bring people through when they go to that?
Yeah. So absolutely. So the inspiration for the retreats was, again, a natural birth. When I started out, I started with a virtual program. I never saw or had the intention to lead retreats. And there was just one client that wasn't willing to do the work on his own and could afford to have me one-on-one work with him in person. And so it was born out of that. I worked with him for 5-6 days, and then he introduced me to his wife at the time, and then her mom and her dad. And so it was a natural unfolding, like I shared before. And it used to be called Journey to Love, because really it is a journey to love. It's a journey to self-love. It's a journey to knowing how to lead with your heart. And the name was actually Training Camp for the Soul. Mike Bledsoe actually named it that once he worked with me 2 years ago. He just felt it was more fitting. And we've been working together at this and helping a lot of people, specifically a lot of people in the fitness space. So people that are already physically fit or driven to work on their physical fitness to get emotionally and mentally fit as well. So as far as the techniques, emotional release work, emotional resiliency, I feel is the most untapped area in self-development to actually get through release. And I feel that a lot of the work that I did, why it took me so long to get to a place of healing and transformation, is because I spent years doing work that was just on a cognitive level, that trimmed the weeds but didn't get to the root of it. To me, the root of it exists in the body, in the energetic body. Our emotions are energy in motion. And so it's not just about, like you said, going into the emotions and then getting sucked into it and stuck there, and not knowing how to get out. And I feel what happens for people that leads them to doing that is that they are going into their emotions, but they're still using they're making their emotions wrong. Like, okay, I feel this. How do I get rid of this? How do I stop feeling this? Like, yeah, I'm angry and this is bad, or I'm sad and okay, I'm going to cry, but that's enough now. So it's still being controlled by the mind of right, wrong, good, bad. That's enough, or I can't allow myself to go there. And really the energy just needs love, acceptance, and curiosity. So I want people to imagine your emotions as a child that you have, whether you are a parent or an aunt and uncle, a child that you have. And when that child is feeling sad or upset or angry, the most effective thing is to sit with them, maybe even hold them, and just listen and love them and give them permission. I see my sister does that with my nephew, who's almost 3. And she's like, it works every time. He cries, and then he says, Mommy, I'm happy now. And so the same thing we need to give to ourselves. So whatever it is you're sensing, you're feeling, instead of judging it or questioning it, analyzing it, why am I feeling this way? I feel that's the most common and popular place that people go and get stuck, is wanting to answer, why am I feeling this way? And the truth is, you can make up a reason. It's still, and then you're logicking your way out of it. You're actually not fully feeling it. Same thing. You ask a child, why are you feeling this way? Why are you feeling this way? Why are you sad? They're just going to get even more sad, or it's going to get stuck for them. And so what I do is I really teach people and give people permission to feel their feelings. Now, to take it a step back, most people don't feel safe to be in their body. So creating a level of safety to be in your body and feel what's there. So, and I can take you through this technique real quick for everyone who wants to start to practice, because they really want to tap more into what they're feeling with permission. It's important to have congruency between what you tell yourself, to your breath, and your body language. So Matt, when someone's scared, how do they normally sit?
Well, they're going to be slumped down and kind of shy,
Yeah, and
And then
probably like,
arms crossed. Yep.
yeah,
Defensive. Yep.
maybe even have their knees up. Yep, all be like curled up in a ball, right? And when someone doesn't feel safe, how do they breathe?
Probably a little bit quicker than normal. A little shallow breathing.
Yep, shallow, or they don't breathe at all.
Yep.
They freeze, right? And so the three steps are to match what you tell yourself: I am safe, I am safe to feel, I'm safe to be in my body, I'm safe to experience this, right? Saying that, and then breathing, diaphragm, belly breathing, deep breath. So creating a match with the breath to the mantra that you just said to yourself. And then sitting, feet planted, grounded on the floor, so you feel the ground beneath you. Palms up on your lap, open, and noticing if your body wants to fidget. That's a protector. That's a disconnect. So really calming and sitting calm with your hands on your lap, palms up, breathing, repeating I'm safe, closing the eyes, and sensing whatever sensation or emotion is there. Say that's the first step. If someone's like, well, I do want to feel more and I want to accept what it is that's coming up for me with love, compassion, and curiosity, how do I get there? These three steps. Repeat that, take breaths, and sit open and grounded.
Well, well, all of this is really incredible advice and very sound technique, because I just did another podcast with Kim Fisk, and she wrote a book called The Monster Under the Bed, Uncovering the Lies That Drive Us. And when we were in that discussion, we were just talking about how the internal dialogue, it might judge people, but it's probably judging ourselves even worse. Most people have such an awful internal critic. And when you go out in the world and you talk to people, or you're doing coaching as you do and I do, and you learn more about people, or even talk to your friends, a lot of my friends won't be really open with their emotions or experiences, especially if they have trauma. And so a lot of people will relive that trauma or that heartache, and then they'll say to themselves, oh, I shouldn't be feeling this way. You've kind of addressed this. So I'm trying to give like an analogy and another perspective for clarity. So sometimes it might be the internal critic saying, oh, you're a loser, or oh, you shouldn't feel sad anymore,
Tough
or
it up.
you're a victim. And yeah, we have this wild internal dialogue. So this is a very simple and practical process for coming back to centering ourselves, but also understanding the quote unquote shadow work in a very grounded way, because I've heard many people write about it and talk about it where I feel like they don't have a full, complete understanding of it. And I don't know if I have a full and complete understanding of it. However, that one didn't match up with how I viewed it. And it feels like what you're sharing now is the way that I'm viewing it currently. It's not like, oh, I'm not supposed to feel this way. I'm never supposed to have bad feelings. Like I remember once working with someone, she's like, I've really taught myself for the last couple of months to only do what's an F yes, like a hell yeah. And I was like, well, I understand the theory behind that, but no pro athlete could ever become a pro athlete with that idea, because some of the stuff we experience in life isn't so great, right? And if we're going to push everything that isn't perfect away and not have a good process to go through, we're going to be missing a lot of life. And if you're doing that outside, you're probably doing that inside with the parts of you that aren't perfect. The parts of like Matt that I'm like, you should be this and this and this, but I mess up. So then inside my mind, I beat myself up because I'm not perfect, because I had this past trauma, because I'm not living up to this ideal of myself that I hold. And so what you're sharing, I think, is very profound. So I wanted to kind of give it back to you and talk a little bit about what I just shared, but how would you recommend the same techniques for the individual who has that trauma, and the individual that kind of has just such a mean internal critic, whether they're judging or they're not accepting the sales or they're not feeling, just using that same technique and kind of drawing it to those two comparisons?
Yeah. So the inner critic, it's interesting because I teach people how to get related to all parts of themselves, intimately related. And so picture that you're having dinner and your guests are your inner critic, which we're all familiar with. It's the part of you that's shitting you all the time or telling you you can't. your ego, which is the part of you that wants to distract you from the internal and look externally to feel better, whether it's numbing out and distracting, or it's judging others to feel better, or it's being right to feel better. Your inner child, which is all your emotions. And by the way, you said something before, I want to touch on this, the like where we make ourselves wrong for a certain emotion, like I shouldn't be feeling this. If you were around a child, whether it's your own or you're babysitting one for a whole day, and that child didn't laugh or cry, would you be concerned?
Well, I've only got a 3-month-old, but she does that pretty often.
Yeah. If she went a whole day without that, would you be concerned
Yeah.
that there must be something wrong? She didn't laugh or cry. She showed no emotion. Yet we grow up and that's what we do to ourselves. We make some emotions right and some quote unquote wrong. So anyway, back to our dinner party guests here. So we have the ego, the inner child, the inner critic, the shadow, which is the parts that we're ashamed of and we want to hide. And then the heart. And ideally you want your heart at the head of the table. But all parts of you are parts of you, and they're not going away. Your inner critic is not going away, and it's never going to sound like your heart. It's just doing its part. And it's not about eliminating the ego or the inner critic. It's about recognizing that that's who's speaking right now and understanding. And sometimes there's gifts in all of them. So sometimes the inner critic is saying to you, oh, man, you shouldn't be eating that ice cream. What the fuck are you doing eating that ice cream? Right. And it's actually like, oh, right, I did make a commitment to get in shape. So thanks for pointing that out. And sometimes the inner critic is not our friend. It's the one that's making us feel incapable and small and not smart enough and all that. And all of these were affected by whatever you witnessed from mom and dad in the first 7 years of your life. So a lot of times, if this is how mom spoke about herself to herself or at you to you, then you're going to see a lot that you treat yourself the way mom treated you, or you treat yourself the way mom treated herself. Mom represents an extension of self. You were born, mom held you, mom's energy is all you recognized. It felt familiar to you. Mom's energy felt familiar to you. And so suddenly in that moment, it was, oh, this is the energy I just spent 9 months in. I am mom, mom is me. And so mom role models the self for you. This is stuff that I delve into. This isn't necessarily something that someone's going to be able to uncover and see all for themselves, especially since your ego, your identity is going to protect you from seeing. So back to the dinner table real quick. When you don't allow yourself to feel emotions, when that inner child is not being tended to, your identity, your ego is going to come in to protect you. It's the ultimate protector. Doesn't want to experience these things, doesn't want the child to experience these things. So it's going to come in, step in, and show up with being right, judging someone else to feel better, or distracting themselves to feel better. And so when that comes up, that's an indication when you're acting from ego, and that's what it's going to look like. It's going to look like one of those. It's an indication that there's some emotion that's not being felt. And so you need to go and pick up your child. You need to pick yourself up. You need to sit, create that safety, picture yourself as that innocent little boy or girl that just learned what they learned from mom and dad and didn't know any better. Pick that child up, hold that child, and love, understand, and accept whatever they're feeling. So back to what you're saying about the inner critic. When the inner critic comes up, it is most likely a very much a learned behavior of how mom talked to you, or what she modeled for you. And there's just to bring a lot of compassion and love in that moment, a lot of compassion and love, that we are doing that to ourselves. And how much, and what is the child feeling? So the inner critic is going to beat up the child, the ego is going to want to protect the child, but either one of them could help the child. The only part that can help the child is you coming from love, coming from the heart. So I always say, sit with whatever is there, whatever emotion you're feeling, whether it's in your chest, in your throat, in your gut, and just observe it with love, compassion, and curiosity. That's it. There's nothing to fix. There's actually nothing to change. There's nothing wrong. It's just energy that got stuck from most likely a very long time ago. And it may not even be yours. A lot of times people realize, oh, I do treat myself the way mom treated me. I learned to talk to myself the way mom talked to me. So whose energy is it? Oh, it's not mine, it's mom's. So what is yours? What do you want? So sometimes that's all that's needed to create that opening.
Hmm. The dinner table analogy is such an awesome one. I really like it. It reminds me a little bit of I did a Buddhism podcast. Shoot, I'm blanking on his name. Is a couple back, but it was really great. And in Buddhism, a lot of the idea is to observe the
Mm-hmm.
emotions, observe the thoughts, and it's similar to what you're doing. But I really like, and I think is important to accept all parts of yourself. And I think
Yeah.
that there's a lot of stuff out there that's like we're trying to take the stuff we don't like and we're shoving it into a corner and we never look at it again. And also society in general, if you look at it, it seems as though it is becoming colder. It's becoming more disconnected. We're becoming more robotic. And yesterday I did a podcast with the Zuni elder Clifford Mahudi, and that's what he was sharing. He was saying, if you look in the world and how people are, we're almost taught now to be so much less empathetic. We're not talking to our neighbors. We're not caring. We're losing our heart. We're going from scarecrow to tin man. And
Yes.
these ideas, especially for a man growing up, you're not supposed to feel fear. You're not supposed to be afraid. You're
Mm-hmm.
not supposed to share your feelings. You're not supposed to talk about emotions. And this isn't healthy behavior because emotions are what come along with being a human. They just have them.
Yeah.
We're just not taught how to understand them in a way that is productive. And when you're talking about the parental thing, it's so fascinating because in working with people, whether it's athletes that are really successful, which I have, and entrepreneurs, which have been really successful, with people who are just everyday people, no matter what their age, a lot of that stuff does come from that early childhood.
Yep.
And in brain development, they say the critical factor isn't formed until 6 or 8. And that's basically your ability to separate what's happening with like how you feel about the world. So everything goes in and it gets stored and it stays there and
Yep.
it'll shape the rest of your life. So my question is, let's say, okay, like how would someone go through that process of like, all right, well, I probably have some childhood trauma and some things I don't enjoy, and I don't want to treat myself like my dad or mom treated me, and I don't want that anymore. Is it just the process of observing that and accepting all parts of you and then deciding what you want, or how does one person move into that space of like, this is how I want to treat myself now? And I really love the Buddha quote where that says, no one in the universe as much as you deserves your love and compassion. And it's so easy and nice to say, and how can we embody that on a daily basis? And one thing that I've been doing lately that's helped that, because I feel like this is something that I always strive to improve on, is I'll just make sure that each day I do something that I'm proud of, and I will focus on that. And I'm like, I focus on that thing. Whereas before, a lot of the time I'd work really hard and just be like, oh, I didn't get enough done. I'd be focusing on all the other things I'm trying to get done rather than the one or two things that I say, you know what, I'm proud of what I've done today. I can be proud of myself. And it builds that momentum moving forward.
Yeah. Very good. So a couple things. Gratitude practice, focusing, and which is similar to what you're saying right now. Of you focus on something you're proud of, which means you're grateful for it. So that's really what it's doing. It's putting you in a state of gratitude as opposed to a state of lack of what you didn't do. I have a great gratitude practice that I coined popcorn gratitude. So when you make popcorn at home, first it just warms up, you don't hear anything, and then like a little bit of pop, pop, pop. and then it's pop, 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 right? So imagine closing your eyes and just allowing something that you're grateful for to come to your mind. And it could be anything and everything from thank you, it's a sunny day, to the great dinner that you had last night, to amazing partner, great clients, right? So it has no limitation to it. And so at first it comes in very slowly. And then there's just so many things that pop up, whether it's someone that led you, like my best friend that led me to living here in San Diego 7 years ago. Oh, so grateful for that. Thank you. If that didn't happen, where would my life be, right? So it could just be anything from this moment, what you're present to your whole life. Thank you for being born, right? So as things pop up in your mind, repeating out loud, saying out loud to yourself, thank you. And something else pops in, thank you. And every time something pops in, you say thank you. You'll get high. It's a powerful vibration. So for those of you that are looking for, well, what practices can I just do at home? I don't know if I want to jump into a retreat with you or not. That if you practice that every day, it's gonna shift you. The other practice is, yes, learning to tend to that inner child. I was called an inner child whisperer by one of my clients. I'm like, oh, I like that. But learning to tend to that child. Mom and dad parented you a specific way. Now it's time to reparent. And so, yeah, if you just practice accepting whatever emotions are there. And when you really give an emotion permission to be expressed or felt, 90 seconds, it moves through. If you're crying for more than 90 seconds, when you're like, oh, I feel like I'm sad and I want to cry, and it's most likely it's because you're fueling it. You're adding story to it. You're pitting. You're in a pity party, as opposed to just feeling what's there without adding more fuel to the fire. Meaning making it true. It just is. Just feel what's there, let go of the story and the meaning. Anger. Now, anger is one that a lot of people, if they harbor it, they'll harbor it. I feel it. Yes, I'm angry. But then they'll go into the ego. So this is where, again, if the child doesn't feel the anger, the ego is going to come in and project it somewhere else. Yeah, he's an asshole. So I had a client this week at my retreat who was very, had a dad that was verbally and physically abusive to him. You know, would like smack him across the head and say, shut up, keep quiet, go sit in the corner. So you could imagine how angry and hurt he was. So at first, if you don't allow yourself to feel that anger, he went to, you know, you're the worst dad ever. I hate you. I wish you weren't alive. I'm never going to be like you. Again, projecting all that on him because he's hurt. And I said, okay, feel the pain. Feel the anger. Feel wherever it is. Feel it. Fully feel it. You're safe to fully feel it. Now, how does it want to be expressed? And how does anger usually want to be expressed? Most likely either yelling, punching something, right? Kicking. So we bring out this big punching bag for him if that's what he wanted. But he just wanted to yell, scream it out. Now, if you are going to do that, for those of you listening that have been harboring anger, don't yell from your throat. Yell from your root. This is a deep root. Imagine having to pull something out of your garden. That's a deep, deep root. You'd have to use every bit of your energy, right? Your whole body. So stand up, soften your knees so you're really solid, right? Like as if you were going to pick something up that's heavy, pull something out that's heavy, and then pull it from your root. Feel the energy all the way from your root up and out. So that's where you yell from. And I'm telling you, within 90 seconds, you're good. And then most likely they'll access what's below that. A lot of times below anger is just that heartache, that heartbreak, especially when it's something related to dad. Dad represents the first love in your life. First time dad held you, this was unfamiliar energy. This wasn't mom's energy that you just spent 9 months in. This was love. The first experience, feeling of love that's new, that feels different, is dad. So everyone has dad on a pedestal, whether he was a good man and deserved it or not. So either your heart was filled or there was heartbreak there. So a lot of times when people deal with the area of father, for them, it's heartbreaking, heart opening. And under that anger is a lot of sadness, is that heartbreak. So then you feel the sadness. So my client moved from that, when he finally yelled and felt all of it, to, I actually want to know my dad. I want to know what his childhood was like. Like, what are the questions that you would want to ask him if you had a chance to ask 5-year-old dad? What was his childhood like? Because most likely this is inherited stuff. Generations of the same thing over and over and over again. Who's going to break it? So I had him do something I call a play date. Have a play date. Are you open to having a play date? At first he said no, before he released the anger. Because when a child is angry, does a child want to play? No. As soon as he released the anger, are you open to having a play date? Yes, I'm open to having a play date. All right. So picture yourself at 5 years old. Picture dad at 5 years old. At one point, your parents were 5, innocent, happy little kids, running around, being imprinted by mom and dad in the world. I said, ask him, where did you learn to love? Have your little boy, 5-year-old you, ask 5-year-old him, where did you learn how to love? And that's when he started to realize and see, wow, I have no idea what my dad's childhood was like. I have no idea what he went through. I have a lot of questions for him. I want to know a lot. And by the end of it, he was like, I forgive my father. And I want to know the world. Father represents the world. I want to know his world. I want to know the world. I want to know. And his inspired action that he's going to take is to call his dad. By the way, no accidents. Totally divine. That morning before that session, his dad called him. He had a missed call from his dad, who he hasn't, he doesn't speak to in years. His dad called him 2 weeks ago, but it's always like he just brushes it off. He just was filled with hate, anger. So what's possible when you allow yourself to feel what's there is that you access the heart again. And his heart really does want to know his father and want to come back to love. So I got off on a big tangent there, but here we are.
That's beautiful. That's a really beautiful story. And I'm glad you shared it. I feel like many people are going to be able to relate to that, whether it's their father or someone in their life or anyone. And the fascinating thing that I've learned about trauma or emotional trauma or the mind or whatever you want to section it as, even if it happened when you're 5 or 8 or 12, or maybe it was 20, who knows? And no matter how much time happens, the amount of emotional energy remains the same. And if we don't process it in some sort of healthy manner, that's where you project the anger, right? That's when you kick the dog. That person's so angry at his father, so he boots the dog, or he drinks and smacks somebody in public, or all of those different things. And if you look at the jails and all the people, if you asked each one of them their story, they were probably abused. They probably had traumas that happened, because the old expression, hurt people hurt people. So if someone's abusing you in your life, you could be very confident that something has happened to them, that they're getting it out in the only way they know how, because it's eating them up and they don't know how to process it in a healthy manner.
And it's the only way they learned.
Yeah.
A lot of
that's
times
important.
abused children, they also subconsciously want to understand the abuser. So they do the same to understand how could he or she have done that to me. They want to understand it. They become it. And it's unconscious. They're not aware of it. Or it's the only way they learned. Or you saw mom hitting dad, or I'm sorry, more commonly, dad hitting mom. And then you wonder, why that woman always attracts men that are abusive, because she learned this is what love looks like.
Yep.
That's what you witness. This is the relationship. And, you know, that woman breaks up with that guy, but attracts the same thing over and over again, because that's what's scripted in. This is what love looks like. Your script is created by the time you're 7 years old. You learn to play certain roles. Some of those roles, it was you copied. It was exactly how mom and dad were. And some of them was because you rebelled or you survived. Here's how I'm going to survive this. Oh, mom's not paying attention to me. She's not listening to me. She's telling me to shut up. Well, then I'm going to do what she says and shut up. Or I'm going to act out, and that person becomes a bully. And that's how they survived not getting the love from mom and dad. So you end up playing certain roles in the movie of your life with the script that was written by age 7, and then casting people to play roles in your movie. Why do I keep being attracted to that emotionally unavailable man? Why do I keep being attracted to emotionally unavailable man? Because what you learned is men are emotionally unavailable. That's how your father was. So this is what love looks like. And you're attracted to that. That's what you cast. Sometimes, you know, you get out of a relationship and you find out that your ex is with someone else, but they're completely different with that person. How is he like that with her? Why wasn't he like that with me? Oh, because she casted him to play out a different role in her movie. And to start to take responsibility, people, for who you're being, and that everyone is just playing out in your movie. And that's an empowering place to stand. It may create a breakdown for people because, okay, now what? But let's retire the victim, because that's a dead end. And really own that everything that's occurring is occurring inside of your movie. So what have you been scripting? And what do you want to script? What do you want to create? And the process to go from survival of playing that same role over and over and over again to creation of who you actually want to be and what you want to create in the world is going to come from feeling those feelings, clearing out those weeds. You want a beautiful garden and it's full of weeds, there's no room for those new seeds, all those great seeds that you bought at the store. You have to clear it out first, and you have to get all the way to the root. So everything that you haven't wanted to feel or admit or accept, as soon as you do, it's gone. And then there's room, and you'll feel that there's room for something new.
Well, I love all those analogies, and I had something in the back of my mind, but now I lost it. So I'll rephrase what I was thinking. You know, I think it's so common that people are playing the victim role and we're not aware of it. We're not playing the victim role and being like, oh, I'm choosing to play the victim role. But it also is very close to the survival role. And what you're talking about, that child, like our mind is mostly formed by 7. And all of
Yep.
those imprints are how we navigate life, because we came into this world and we're like, holy crap, what's going on? And we have no idea. And so it imprints, and so much of what we do is survival and what we're witnessing. And the thing is, we play that whole way unless we analyze it, unless we decide, hey, you know what? This is how I'm acting and I need to change this. And it's so interesting because it's basically like you have adults, but they're going around as children. And I have
Yeah.
seen this with
Yep.
very successful people. And I'm like, you are a man child, like you are a child.
Mm-hmm.
And most people are like that, but it's just because the program that got imprinted right away, and they were never taught how to rewrite that program. And we
Yep.
can rewrite the program and we can modify it, but it takes some awareness, it takes some understanding, and it takes some tools that actually work. And there's a lot of tools out there that are not as useful or as effective as others, you know, and I try all the different tools, and some of them have more of a hype story around them than a practical understanding. And I think that what you're sharing now is very, very practical. And so I love the idea of like going into that memory and screaming out like the anger or whatever, and like really feeling that emotion and understanding like what role we're playing. Once that happens, do you think that that's enough for them to shift, or do you have a process then to say, you know, this is now what I want? You know, if I've been playing the victim role and I've been doing this my whole life? Do you show them how to like imprint another format, or where do they go from there once they've kind of identified, felt it, screamed it out? Mine was
Yeah.
punching, and we actually had a punching bag in our
Mhm.
basement. So when my sister would get really mad at me, my mom would make her go down there and punch the bag. And, I think being a martial artist and dealing with what I had to deal with, I just punched stuff and it helped.
Yep.
It still helps.
Yeah.
It's very
So
primal.
yeah. So I want to say a few things. By the way, if you ever forget something, instead of saying I forgot, say I choose to remember.
Mm.
It will come back to you. Because again, we're so used to being like, oh, I forgot. Damn it, I forgot. Damn it, I forgot. So guess what? It's not going to come back. But 99% of the time, when I say I choose to remember, it comes back. So now to answer your question, there's 5 stages of transformation or of healing to go through, right? First, it's becoming aware of what it is, right? Stage 1 is awareness, which a lot of people are at with certain things. And then there's things that they're not aware of that they would become aware of if they wanted to delve deeper and work with me. Stage 2 is acceptance and commitment. Now, some areas, it could be real easy to accept, oh shit, I'm like this, I don't want to behave this way, I'm committed to changing it. And in other areas, it's a real threat to your identity. Because if you've built this whole identity around my father's a jerk, right? He's an asshole. I'm not talking about mine here, but right, like the client that I had that was like, worst father ever. I hate him. I wish he died. And you've been living that way for 30 something years. There's a lot of resistance to admitting, wow, I need to actually look at this, where how I feel about my father may shift. And so this is where a lot of times people need their hand held or supported, or they just need to give themselves permission to fully feel it. So something else I want to say about anger, or if you want to complete something that didn't feel complete from your childhood, you want to ask yourself 2 questions. What did I need from mom or from dad that I didn't get, that if I got now? What did I need from them? So you start to see what you actually needed, who you needed mom to be. And that's who you want to start being for yourself, right? Or dad. And the other question is, well, if dad was smacking you across the head or telling you, shut up, kid, go sit in the corner, you were afraid to speak back because dad was a giant and you were this little person. And so you want to imagine that you're not that little person anymore. You're safe. You're just as big. What did you want to say to mom and dad that you didn't feel safe to say because you felt they were so much bigger than you? And a lot of times that's what gives people permission to punch the bag or to scream it all out. And so to answer your question of once they say all that, or once you punch the bag, how did you feel afterwards? What did you feel next? So the next thing is always checking in. Well, what do I feel now? Well, now I feel all the sadness. Okay, so now I got to feel all that. Okay, now what do you feel? Peaceful, calm, happy. Okay, so that's good. There's nothing we need to do there. Well, think about a child. When the child is done crying or having that tantrum, you normally ask them, and they're fine. You say, well, sweetheart, what do you want to do now? And 99% of the time, they'll say, I want to play. They'll be ready to play, ready to create something new. So when you come to that space where those emotions that haven't been felt still need to be felt, and they are, and it's cleared, what's possible now? What's available now that wasn't available before? And you check in and you listen, because you gave it to yourself. It may be self-love, to love myself, or for my client that I was sharing about, to forgive my father, to get to know my father. And so you pulled out the old weed and you just planted a seed. And that seed is to forgive my father, to get to know my father. Seed planted. Now, what happens when you plant a seed? If you don't water it, it doesn't grow. assuming there's no rain, right? Like in San Diego. If you plant the seed in San Diego, it's not raining here much. So the key part is to water that seed. So you can declare something new, but if you don't act now, it's not going to stick. So if you declare, I forgive my father, there better be an action of calling your father and letting him know that you forgive him. And so this is what I mean by taking people into inspired action. And that's the guarantee. Like, people leave training camp for the soul taking a lot of inspired action. And I say inspired because people are acting in the world, but most of them are acting out of survival. They're acting out of fear. They're not acting out of inspiration. So does that answer your question as to like what's next? Taking action. Plant the new seed, replace it, right? Going back to the stages of development. Stage 3 is getting to the root, feeling the emotion. Stage 4 is releasing and replacing. Oh, this is something I haven't shared yet. Releasing. So here are all the ways that so far that I've witnessed people release. So yes, we've talked about anger, catharsis. We've talked about crying. Those are common ones. Laughing is a form of release. I've had clients have laughing attacks. Yawning is a form of release. I've had clients that held so much tension. She was always so tense that when I worked with her, it was just a constant yawning. I'm talking about 10 minutes of yawn, 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 yawn. Burping is a form of release. So I had a client that stuffed that anger down so much that it became like an air bubble, that when she finally let it out and punched the bag, when she was done punching, she burped nonstop for 30 minutes. Shaking is a form of release. So if your body starts tremoring and shaking, whether it's your hand or it's your whole body, that's a form of release. And yeah, I think those are the ones. That's it. Maybe forgetting one, but so just to give people an idea of like, well, how do I know that I released it? Well, those are, I'd say, the most common ones. So stage 4, releasing, and then replacing, right? So there's stage 4.1 and 4.2. So you release, and then you have to replace. If you don't replace, then you're still going to default. If you edit a script, but you're only editing a part of a scene, what's going to happen? The scene must go on, so they're just going to default to, well, you didn't let me know what we're replacing this with, so I had to go on stage and just act out the old. The importance of replacing and then taking action quickly. Stage 5, education and integration. So education. A lot of people become aware of something that they're not happy with, that they want to change, right? Stage 1. Stage 2, they understand it, they're committed to it. Then they think they could just hop to reading a book or going to a seminar about whatever it is. Like, my boyfriend told me I'm not vulnerable. Oh, wow, maybe I am not vulnerable. I want to be vulnerable. Okay, I'm going to go read a book on vulnerability. What's missing is that they skipped the stage of clearing out. So for those of you that feel like you know a lot, you've learned a lot, you have so much information, but it's not sticking, or you still don't have the results, is because you skipped stage 3 and 4. It's like buying all the seeds, but you haven't cleared out the weeds. You can't skip those steps. Once you have done those steps, now it's, okay, so the declaration is, I am vulnerable. I am open. It is safe to be vulnerable. Well, now the breakdown is, what the fuck does that look like? I have no framework for it. No one ever modeled that to me. This is where you can read a book, go do an intimacy retreat, talk to people that access vulnerability easily, listen to a podcast on vulnerability, and there's room for it to stick. There's room to integrate it in. So that's stage 5, education, and then integration. And integration is the practice, is constant practice. If I give you a new script right now, you're not ready to perform it that night. But the more you practice it, the more you're ready for that opening night. And that's the process to transformation. And that's what I take people through.
That's amazing. Well, that's incredibly well-rounded and kind of puts it all in a really important nutshell. And I think that you don't leave any stone unturned, because the seeds example, watering the seed, is so important, because just what I'm aware of in neurology, it's like, and you know this from neurolinguistic programming, we have these mental maps and these programs and how we see and view the world. And that might be how we interact with it, how we keep ourselves safe and all this kind of thing. And so if we're going about each and every day with the same program, we're going to get the same results. But once we start to switch it, it's going to take some time. We're going to need to
Mhm.
go to that new decision. We're going to have to plant, we're going to have to keep watering the seed of what we prefer. And it might be a little bit challenging at first because you're
Yep.
so used to the old pattern. But as long as you're aware of that and you keep putting energy and direction and focus in this new place, what's going to happen is called neural pruning. And so that old map, that old model will begin to break away. It'll fall down, and you'll be living, experiencing this new model with new options, with new feelings, with new emotions, and a different way of being. And it's so important. And I think that a lot of people like give up on that. They're going to miss one of those steps that you shared. And I feel like that's such a really great model for understanding emotions and how we understand our beliefs and navigate in the world. It's very awesome information. Um, this has been amazing. I think that what you shared is going to help a lot of people because it's such an important topic. And I feel like it's something that's not commonly taught or understood, male, female, and this world, let's face it, is not easy. It's not really a safe place a lot of the time. A lot of us have trauma, and some of them are more intense than others. And we need to have this kind of emotional IQ, this emotional education to understand ourselves. Because if we go about the one trauma or having a crappy childhood or anything that happens in our external world that shapes us in a way where we feel disempowered and we live the rest of our lives in a disempowered state, is very
Yeah.
sad. And it seems to be that's what the common thing is happening. Most people feel disempowered, but if you look at any great teacher, Jesus, Buddha, all the great masters, they say, go within. And if you can connect with yourself and the spirit, which we all have, however you view that, you can begin to shape your reality. But it's going to happen over time, and you need these understandings. So thank you
Yeah.
so much for sharing that.
Yeah, it's not only, healing past traumas that we need to give ourselves permission to feel, developing emotional resiliency, the ability to be with whatever emotion arises. Look, life's going to keep handing you shit, right? There's things that we're going to have to deal with at different ages that maybe, you talk to a 22-year-old millennial. Well, they're not millennials anymore, whatever generation they are. You talk to a 22-year-old, I'm getting old. You talk to a 22-year-old, there's not much that they're worried about yet in life. You talk to someone who's 50, they're dealing maybe with, their parents needing support, needing to be taken care of. They're dealing with disease, with illness, with maybe kids who are having trouble, marriage issues, all this stuff. So life's going to keep handing you things. Just like the weather isn't always sunshine and rainbows. I know I live in San Diego, but really it's still not always that. Sometimes there's a storm, and what is that going to do to your garden? Right? It's going to make a mess. And having the tools to know that no matter what life hands you at whatever age, that you have the tools to tend to that and to come back to life. And so that's the long term, right? Because some of you listening may be like, well, my childhood was great. I don't have any big quote unquote traumas. By the way, it's not always obvious traumas. It's not always dad hit me, mom yelled at me. Sometimes it could be mom forgot to pick me up at practice, and I didn't have a cell phone back then. And I sat there thinking she forgot about me. And that moment right there created a quote unquote trauma for you. So it's not always the obvious ones, but regardless, even if you have dealt with that stuff or you don't feel that your childhood needs it, do you have the ability to be and accept all emotions, to express all emotions? Because if you don't, you may come across something that life hands you and get stuck.
Very well said, and I agree with that. It's everybody's life experience is very different. So one trauma to one person, or challenging experience, and is going to be different for another person. Then also, how do we relate to that? And it keeps happening. You know, whether it's happening as a kid or as an adult, we'll add a story, right? Our mother didn't pick us up, so it means this, and then maybe we're not safe and we're not loved, and then all of a sudden it goes haywire. And it could be something subtle, but to us at the time, it's very big and it's very meaningful. But if you look at it as an adult, you might say, oh, that's nothing, but it might be carrying more weight than you understand. So I think that's a very fantastic point. I appreciate everything that you've shared, and I think it's
Thank
such
you.
important information. Is there anything that you wish that I'd asked or that you want to talk about before we close it up?
Um, Nothing that I wish that you asked. I really loved how this conversation flowed and unfolded. You know, the more podcast interviews I do, the more I'm just like, well, I don't want to say the same thing in the same way. And I know it's been a great interview when it feels like a new conversation to me as well. So thank you for that.
Yeah, my pleasure. It was awesome for me too over here. I learned a lot. I think again, like I've had a lot of podcasts, but the way that you have that model of understanding, it's almost like uh what is it, like the death process, like all those stages. You have all the stages. So if you're missing one, you can kind of go back and you have enough tools and enough information
Mhm.
to understand and make a change, even if you've just listened to this. So I think it's really important. Where can people find more about your work if they want to dive deep and get the full experience, or they want to learn more? Where do they go?
Sure. So I have a website, although it is going to be getting a full upgrade over the holidays, but you can go to trainingcampforthesoul.com. There's a free guided meditation on there. It's very unique meditation, so check that out. If you want to have a conversation with myself or my team, you can apply and we can see what's a fit. We do in-person live small group retreats, but I also have the same as a 10-week virtual program. So there, you know, something for everyone, whether you're across the world in Australia to right here in San Diego.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for the work you're doing. It's really amazing, and I look forward to staying connected.
Yeah. Oh, and if people want to follow me, they can follow me on Instagram or Facebook, Anat Peri, and I put out some content on there. So looking forward to it. Thank
Awesome.
you.
Well, I'll make sure all the links and everything is there for people to find you. And yeah, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks.
Okay. See you guys. Peace.